Hey, how's it going, people? Brown Brady here, and thank you for tuning into my channel. And in this episode, I'll tell you how I'm breaking in my Yamaha MT-07 as I take it landlording in beautiful Bowmanville, Ontario. And if you're new to my channel, I do motorcycle how-to videos, gear reviews, tips and tricks, and moto vlogging. So if you'd like to follow along, please hit that subscribe button. And now let's get into it. Last week, I bought a 2021 Yamaha MT-07, so I'll be breaking in the bike for the first few hundred kilometers. I happen to own a rental property in Bowmanville, Ontario, which is just a few kilometers away from where I live. I received a call from the tenant because their dryer won't come on anymore. So I'm riding my bike there to investigate. To those new to riding, or driving in general, the break-in period is the first 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers where you have to drive a vehicle a certain way. The reason for this is that pistons from brand new engines will have microscopic imperfections that must rub against a cylinder wall and get polished or bedded in. This process happens during the break-in period when these imperfections smoothen out to form a seal, resulting in reduced friction and improved performance. I bought this motorcycle in the fall when demand is low. Unfortunately, so is the outside temperature. That means tires will take longer than normal to warm up. Brand new tires need to be scrubbed a little bit to open up the contact patch. That means the break-in process actually started in the dealer's parking lot. Before I took this bike out on the street, I rode it around the dealer's parking lot for a few minutes. By doing circles and figure eights, this warmed up the tires a little bit and roughened up the tire's contact surface. This also gave me a chance to familiarize myself with the controls of the bike outside of the public roads. It helped me shake off nerves too, so I'm more confident when I finally take it to the streets. So what is the best way to break in a motorcycle? I did some research on this and found that this can be a highly disputed subject. There are generally three techniques. Hard braking is when you ride it like you stole it. Soft braking is when you ride it at low revs. And mid braking is when you cruise at mid revs. And it turns out that sticking to any one of these techniques may be bad for your engine. What happens if an engine is improperly broken in? Well, if the cylinder walls develop deep gouges or warped surfaces, oil from the crankcase can leak into the combustion chamber, and gas from the combustion chamber can leak into the crankcase. This results in loss of compression, fuel economy, and horsepower. The risk of hard braking is a warping of the surfaces so that a tight seal cannot be achieved. This occurs when the piston rings soften at high temperatures during sustained high revs, and it can warp the surfaces when the engine cools down. On the other hand, soft braking can cause deep gouges in the cylinder walls when lugging the engine. This can happen when you keep the revs too low or have too much weight on the bike, causing an overload. This compression during overload can drive the microscopic imperfections into the cylinder wall and carve deep gouges. And when mid-braking by cruising at sustained mid-revs, the engine will only be subjected to a limited range of heat and compression. And when you introduce revs and compression outside this range, the uneven friction can cause surfaces to not match properly. Meanwhile, back at the rental property, it turns out that it was just a blown fuse. So I bought a new one at the local hardware store, replaced the blown fuse, and turned the circuits back on. I'm glad it was just an $8 fix.
Is it our tree? Well, take a look.
My tenants are the best, and I don't mind doing these minor repairs. But it appears I may have to cut a tree down next month.
It is our tree. Our tree.
Having said all that, what is the best way to break in a motorcycle? Well, one of my commenters named Tim's Motorcycle Diary said this: you don't need to keep it under 6,000 RPM during the break-in. Just don't rev it above the red line. On highway on-ramps, accelerate up to red line, gear up, accelerate to red line, gear up, and so on. Vary the speed and gear during break-in. But at the dealership, they said this.
Keep the bike under 6,000 RPM unequivocally for the first 1,000 kilometers for break-in.
So why did the dealership tell me to keep it below 6,000 RPM? Tim's Motorcycle also said this. All dealers say the same thing to avoid litigation. There's always 1 in 100 riders who does something stupid, wrecks his motorcycle, and blames a dealership. And many seem to agree that this is true. This makes a lot of sense to me. If manufacturers recommended that new owners should quote-unquote accelerate up to the red line, new and inexperienced riders may use this as an excuse to hard brake the motorcycle. And if they wreck the engine, they could sue the manufacturer. Thank you, Tim's Motorcycle Diary, for commenting. And so this is how I'll be breaking in my motorcycle. By subjecting it to a wide range of heat and compression. By varying the RPMs, using all the gears, avoiding lugging the engine, staying below the red line, and allowing the engine to cool down. What about you? How do you brake in your motorcycle? Are you a hard braker, a soft braker, in between? Do you agree or disagree with any of these strategies? Let me know in the comments section. As for me, I'm going to continue to brake in this motorcycle every chance I get. I know it's been raining a lot more recently because of the fall weather, and also my attention is divided between this and my M50. What more if a third motorcycle were to creep into this garage? Anyway, I think that's all for this episode. If you liked it, please hit that like button and share it with your friends. And if I've earned it, please hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video. As always, ride safe and thanks for watching.
You look like a bobblehead.